Hi, my name is Vesna Karapetrova and we're here today at Canadian Macedonian Place on May 26, 2015 to interview Ms. Zoe Christo for the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society. Welcome, Zoe, and thank you for sharing your story with us here for the archives of the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society.
You're most welcome.
Let's begin, Zoe, if you can please tell us by where and when you were born.
I was born in Vumbil, Selo Vumbil, near the Kostur region in the Asian area, and I was born December the 23rd, 1938.
And who were your, let's talk a little bit about your ancestors. And we've got a lovely picture of Vumbil there. Can you tell us a little bit about Vumbil? Because I know that you have some wonderful memories.
Vumbil, that is my Dedo Yilo, which is my mother's father. And she was one of three in the family. My Dedo Yilo was a voivoda in the Macedonian army. He had a group that he managed through the wars and the challenging times in the Civil War.
Great. And we also have a very special picture too of, it is a picture, I believe, of your great-grandparents. Can you tell us who they are?
Oh, that's my mother's Dedo and Baba, and actually my Dedo Ilo's parents, actually. My Dedo Ilo's parents are there. And there's the big tall man was my mother's brother. His name was George, and the lady beside her was Vasa. That was her sister.
Okay, wonderful. And these are your ancestors from great-grandparents from your mother's side?
Yes.
And where are they born?
They were actually born in Vumbil too. They were Baba Digalka. I always remember Baba Digalka, and don't remember Dedo, but I remember Baba Digalka. Okay. And when my grandfather was killed in the Macedonian army, because they always go for their leaders. Mm-hmm. And later on in life, my mother told me. Mm-hmm. I was always moved when she said that. She said that, you know, her father loved his country more than he loved his family, which was not true, but that's how she felt.
And this is another picture of your...
Yeah, my Dedo Ilo, and that was his nephew, Doncho.
Mm-hmm. Now, what year would it be that Dedo Ilo was involved in the fighting?
Well,
that would be around, just roughly.
You know what? When was the Civil War in
the 40s? In the
40s, I guess.
Right.
He was born in the 20s. Well, yeah, I guess it was in the 40s.
And so, he would have been in the army. And what were they fighting for, as far as you were
Well,
told?
as far as I can understand, mm-hmm. and piece it all together, is Dedo Ilo was very passionate about freeing the people in Macedonia and freeing Macedonia.
And at this time, they were under occupation. They were not free.
Well, they weren't free, and I don't know much about the people, the other countries that they were fighting against. Mm-hmm. I think Germany was one, mm-hmm. Turkey.
Yeah, and what language did your family speak in Vumbil?
We spoke Macedonian.
Right. So your uncle was fighting for the people in his village to have the rights?
Yes, in his village and in all the surrounding areas, like Kostud and...
What language did they have to speak?
Well, they spoke Macedonian, but I guess they were forced to speak Greek.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And
I would assume.
Right, and this is right from your great grandparents' the language that they spoke at home was Macedonian.
Yes, we all spoke Macedonian.
And then we have another picture. I think it's a little closer.
Now this is on my dad's side. That's my Baba Zoya and my Dedo Mitre.
Okay, and where did they live?
They lived in Vumbil.
Yes?
Yes, they were on the Golemata Mala. You know, they were on the hill in Vumbil. They had I remember a big walnut tree in their place.
Mm-hmm. And how about Zoe, in terms of your aunts and uncles? Do you remember having an extended family, a big extended family in Vumbil?
I don't really remember because that was kind of when the war was going on, and I remember, just staying very close to where we lived. But my mother's family lived there too, Baba Digalka and whoever else was with her. And but we were very just close with the Panis family, my father's family.
Your father's.
My Dedo Mitre and Baba Zoya.
Right, so they would have been speaking also with them, you spoke?
Macedonian, yeah.
Okay.
And my brother was older than me, and my kid brother was 5 years younger.
Mm-hmm. And with your parents, can you tell us exactly their names and who they were? We have a lovely picture here.
Yes, my father's name was Risto, and my mother's
last name?
And Risto Panos, and my mother's name was Amara. She came from the Digala family, but she was married to my dad.
And how about your brothers and sisters? You mentioned you started to talk about them. Can you tell us how many siblings you have?
Well, I'm one of three, the middle child, and the only girl. My oldest brother is a year and a half older than me, and my youngest brother is 5 years younger than me.
And their names were?
My oldest brother's name was Costa, which is Danny in English. And my young brother was Doncho, and his name is Donald in English.
And where were they born?
They were all born in Vumbil.
Okay. Now, Zoe, you were also born in Vumbil, as you told us.
Yes.
What can you remember of your life in the village? And just details, memories, for example, how big would you say the village was? How many people, houses?
Well, what I can remember is homes were very close to each other, and everybody was close to each other due to the fact that they were very close geographically. And I remember my Baba always telling me that the Panossi family are number one, and we have to keep up that tradition. And my job was, when I was very young, to go to the Vumbla, where they have the water, the fresh water. And
the well?
Yeah, the well. And bring the water for the day. So that was every morning I had to do that.
And how old were you at this time?
Well, I had to be, around 5 or 6. And
that was your job?
That was my job. And then when I did have spare time, I would have to, because we were on a hill, our house was on a hill, and all the cobblestones coming down, I would have to sweep the walk. So that was another thing that I said that I had the Baba training at a very young age before I knew that.
Yes, and who were your friends, Zoe, when you weren't busy helping at home with chores?
Well, I don't really recollect too many friends by name, but there were kids in the neighborhood that we would play with.
Yes.
And I remember when we finally got word that we were going to Canada, all the little kids would come up to me and say, "Oh, can I have that little dress and that little sweater and that whatever they wanted?" And I said, "Sure, yeah, you could have it." But it was like, a bit of a not knowing where we were going and what was happening. but I knew that something was happening.
Right, and when you mentioned your friends and games, do you remember any of the games that you played together in the village?
Well, I think we played these stone little games, where you throw stones up and gather them. But it's vague. It's very vague.
Like you throw 5 and you try to get it.
Yes.
Okay.
Like one.
Pet come in. Yes. Yes.
So we played that kind of game, but I don't have a lot of memory of, the names of the people.
And did you go to school, Zoe?
No, I did not go to school. School was not available to us at that time.
Right. Why was that?
Well, due to the fact that we were Macedonians and the Greeks were fighting with us, and my mother went to school. She had, I think, 4 or 5 years of school. She learned to read and write Greek.
So she didn't have, was there a Macedonian school for your mother to go to?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know that.
But
I don't think so, because...
So your mother went to a Greek school and learned how to
speak Greek.
But you yourself,
No, we children did not have the opportunity to go to school.
And this was around 1940?
Well, we arrived here in 47, August 7th, 47. So it had to be in the mid-40s or early 40s.
Right. So you mentioned that you didn't have a chance to go to school because of the war years. But do you remember any special occasions in the village? Any fond memories from Vumbel?
Well, in Vumbel they had kind of a small lake in the middle of the selo, and there was always functions going on there. We as kids could not go there in case we fell in and drowned or something, but there were always things going on. And I remember the sad time where my dad died.
This was while you were still in Vumbel?
Yeah, my dad died there. Now,
Sorry.
he was not, he got pneumonia. And in those days, as you know, there was no penicillin or anything to stop that, from getting worse. But they did go to Kostud in Lenin to try to get help for him, and they were not able to. And when he got ill, as time went on, he got quite ill. And I remember him asking me to hold an umbrella over his head while he kind of laid in the sun, to think that that would help him get better. I remember that.
And how old would you have been at this time?
I guess I had to be about 5. But I just wanted to say that they really kept the children away from sadness like that. So we were like taken to the neighbor's home when he finally did pass away, and I didn't see, a coffin or how it was buried or where it was buried. I didn't see any of that.
And then Zoe, after your father did pass away tragically so young, you came to Canada shortly after?
Well, my uncles that had come to Canada when it was easier to do so, because my grandmother, my Baba Zoya, said, Chendo, there is nothing here for you. You have to go to a country where there's opportunities. And
yes.
And so my Uncle George and my Uncle Tommy were sent.
And this is a nice picture of them, yes? So they came to?
They came to Canada. And it was always the understanding that when they got settled here, and they could bring us over, because there was my Dedo and Baba, my mother, my widowed mother, and the 3 of us. So there was, a lot of us, that they would bring us as soon as they could.
Right. Can I just go back just a little bit to Vumbel, just with your recollection? Do you remember, Zoe, if there were, you mentioned that school was not available, were there any stores, any kind of commercial life?
Well, I don't remember in our cello if there was anything like that. I do remember that, they had lots of farmland and they would, and a lot of animals, and in the wintertime they would, store their food for the winter.
Right.
By whatever that, farming that they did.
So most of the people's occupation was farming?
Yes, they had, their pigs and their sheeps and their...
they were self-sufficient, it sounds like.
Very self-sufficient.
Yeah, so they may not have had a lot of
no, they
need
didn't.
For...
but my dad was was a tailor in
Vumbel?
In Vumbel. And he would go to, the cities like Kostur and Lenin and buy the fabric and make suits, jackets.
So, do you remember him having was his store in your house, or?
I don't remember that, but I know that that's what he did.
Okay. And we had that nice picture of your two uncles who first came to Canada.
Yes.
Do you remember who brought them to Canada?
I think, my Dedo Mitre had the resources that he could pay for their flight here. I don't know how they came, and have them set up. Now, immediately after they did get here, as you know, most of the immigrants had restaurants. And my uncle Tommy had the Sword restaurant on King and Yonge.
It was called?
It was called the Sword Restaurant. And it was quite famous. He worked around the financial district there, so, and he was, the man that greeted everyone coming in, and he was very good looking, very personable, and a nice man. That was my Uncle Tom. And my Uncle George had a restaurant on Bond Street, and it was the Bond Restaurant.
So this is again downtown Toronto.
Downtown Toronto.
Okay. Wonderful. And tell us about your story as you were getting ready to come to Canada. How did that happen?
Well, I remember there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of commotion, a lot of people visiting, a lot of young little kids coming over and saying, you're leaving, I hope we see you again, and can you leave me some of your clothes, and things like that. And before I knew it, it was like a dream. We would go to bed one night and the next morning, and I don't even know how we got to from Vumbel to Athens, but we flew from Athens. We got to Athens, and I don't recall, and we flew to Canada.
And this was, the year was?
1947. We arrived in August the 7th, 1947.
And you were how old?
I was 8 years old.
8 years old. And we have a picture here that is very interesting from the newspaper, some newspaper articles. Can you tell us what happened when you arrived?
Well, apparently I was told that we were one of the first families to arrive after the Canadians opened their borders for the immigrants to come. And when we did arrive on the plane from Athens, they took our picture, and it was in the paper, and we kept it.
Yes, it's quite an original article, right? The article is copied, and it's from 1947. That's amazing.
Yes.
What kind of documents did you come with when you came to Toronto?
We had kind of a passport with our names and our ages and where we came from.
And at that time, when you came to Canada from Athens, you landed in?
I thought we landed in Montreal, but we got somewhere in Cornwall or Montreal, and we were met by my Uncle Tom and my Aunt Sophie. And my Uncle George, I guess, had to, keep business going. He looked
Yes.
after the restaurants, and they lived very close to each other. My Uncle Tommy and Uncle George. One lived on in the Kingsway, 6 Old Mill Terrace, and the other one lived in 44 Rivercrest Road, which was also in that same area around Jane and Bloor. And how we were able to split ourselves up between the two uncles is my mother and I stayed with my Uncle Tom and Aunt Sophie, and my brothers and my Dedo and Baba went to Uncle George on Rivercrest Road. But we were always back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Okay. And when you came to Canada, the very first few days or months, what is your recollection, Zoe? What did you go to school, or you mentioned that you kind of got a little bit divided
Yes.
between the families, and then how did your life develop?
Well, what I remember is my Aunt Sophie told me that the beginning of the next month, September, the early September, I would be going to school. And I would have to have a name change, because my name was Zoika in Vumbell. And I would, and she said I would have to have a name change and clothes and haircut that I could fit into the Canadian system. So I became a Joyce, and new clothes, new hair, and I went to school, I guess the first week in September, and there I didn't know a word of English, and I sat in that chair wondering how I was ever going to survive. I thought that the war zone that we left would be better than being in Canada, feeling like an alien. I said that in my speech. It was like, wow.
And what school were you at?
I was actually at Sunny Lee School in the Kingsway.
And what grade were you registered? Was it-
I went to grade 1.
Grade 1.
Whatever. I guess they had grade 1, whatever. But I was, like, as you know, I was 8 years old in grade 1 with all these kids. I had a picture, actually, which I didn't bring. I'm sorry.
But we do have a nice picture here with you and your siblings.
Yes,
When you came to Canada.
Yeah, that's when we kind of got Americanized. As you can see, we've got, the new clothes and looking very Canadian-like.
And how did you feel, Zoe? You mentioned that your aunt told you that you have to get your name changed, and you became
I became Joyce.
Joyce. Yes.
From Zoika to Joyce. And
And now you're Zoe. Can you tell us a little bit about that change?
well,
How did you feel at the beginning? Yeah.
yes, so I was a Joyce for a long, long time. And then I'm going to fast track now how I became a Zoe. I was, then I became, very entrepreneurish, and I'm in my 40s now after being married. And I was looking for a name to name my store. And I married a Bruce Christo, and my name was Zoika. So I thought, Zoika, Zoe, kind of the same. That more acceptable. Zoe is more acceptable than Zoika. So we named the store Zoe Christo Fashions, and out of that I became a Zoe. So I was known in the business world as a Zoe Christo, and it just stuck.
Okay. Now, as you started to go to school, and you mentioned that it was very difficult at the beginning because you didn't speak any English, how did you learn the language? How did that first year go?
Well, it's amazing. I don't know how it went. It just, you just are thrown into a situation and you sink or swim kind of a thing. And before I knew it, I could, English was not a problem.
And were your siblings with you at the school at this time?
No, they went to another school in their area. I went to a school in the area that I lived in, which was the Kingsway. And my brothers went to another school not far from there.
And how about your mother? What was she doing in the meantime?
Well, actually, because my uncles had a restaurant, my mother was helping them in the restaurant. Whatever she was doing there, whatever she could help, she did.
Okay. And then how did you progress from there with your family? You went to school, you learned the language, and tell us about that early part of your life.
The early part of my life, so we went to school, and then my dedo and baba and my mother and my two brothers and I, we decided that we would buy a little house and be together. And we did. We bought a house on Corbett Avenue around St. Clair and it was 85 Corbett Avenue. I'll always remember it. It was a 2-bedroom bungalow, and there we were, starting off with nothing and building it up.
And this was your mom working hard and your dedo and baba with you?
And that's right. So we went to the neighborhood school and George Symes School, and then we graduated and went to high school.
Were there any Macedonian
No.
children at that time? No?
Not in our community. And often I talk to my brother and my husband because he grew up in Cabbagetown. He was born here and grew up in Cabbagetown. And of course, Cabbagetown was a Macedonian community. Everybody lived in Cabbagetown, where we were from the West End, and there was hardly any Macedonians my mom had some friends that would come and visit that were Macedonian, but not in our neighborhood where we were living.
Yes, so during this time you lived in the west end of the city, and what was your social life like in terms of connecting with Macedonians? You mentioned that your mother had a friend that she visited. Was your family involved in any kind of church community life, or?
Well, my aunt and uncle went to St. Cyril's. So we would, on special occasions, go to St. Cyril's, and we were part of that community. But as far as our neighborhood, it was, you get to know your neighbors. You were feeling already part of the Canadian system,
And then you stayed at the house that you bought with your immediate family for
Yes.
how long was that?
Well, I finished school. I decided to kind of fast track, and I took a business course, and I wanted to. And my baba kept saying, "Čendo ne ti treba školje, ke se mažiš, ke imaš familija I to ne ti treba mnogo školje."
So she wasn't advising you to go ahead and
No,
get
she was
an
not.
education.
She was not, and I wasn't expected of me. So
You finished high school though?
Yeah, I went through in high school. I decided to fast track, and I decided that I would take a business course at Shaw's, and out of that, I was able to get a great job with the Canadian National Railroad in the accounting department. And I had to be 16, 17, and there I started, my career as a working immigrant in Canada.
Now at this time was it still quite rare for women to have a job and to be involved?
Well, I don't know really.
For Macedonian women.
Well, don't forget I'm young now, right?
Yes.
So it was expected for me to go to school and get a job and then get married, right? Well, it didn't quite work out in that order. I got a job and I worked for, many years and with the Canadian National Railroad. And there I was able to bid on jobs, learn, get that training, and have an increase in my salary. And I like that.
What was your position again?
I was in the accounting department, so I had I learned many facets of the accounting in the Canadian National Railroad because it was a big office.
Okay. And then as you as you got older and progressed in your in this career, what changes? Were there any changes?
Well, I continued to work, and I was always told to save my money, and still had lots of restrictions on what a girl can do and what a boy can do, and so so I was in my 20s now, and I was still working, and at home they were always reminding me that my biological clock is, ticking, and when am I going to get married? When am I going to, they would always try to fix me up with somebody or another.
Were these
Macedonians and
boys from similar
people
villages?
They were Macedonian, you know, and they were always trying to fix me up, and somehow, it never worked out. But Bruce and I met one day.
Yes, I was going to ask you about your social life in between. So basically, did you go to any Macedonian dances?
Yeah,
or
we did.
Functions?
Yes.
Was this on your own or after you met your husband?
It was actually on my own, because we had some cousins in the area, and then I had some friends that I met, and we would go to the church dances and things like that.
So which church and which dance?
Well, St. Cyril's. I can remember St. Cyril's dancing that they had, and it was fun, and I met lots of people there, and I met other people that lived in the West End, and so we became friends.
Okay, and who were some of your friends at that time that you met at St. Cyril's?
Well, Jeannie and Christine, Christoph, they were from Vombil, and they lived near us, so they were part of the. And then my relatives, the Zhuglofs, they were part of the St. Cyril's, and we would go to those dances and things like that. But then all the girls got married between the ages of, early 18, 21, and that kind. And I was still single and still working.
And how did you meet your husband?
Well, in my late 20s, Bruce worked for Hogan Pontiac, and I skied with a bunch of girls, and my friend Jackie Stewart knew Wendy, the office girl there that was at Hogan's, and she invited Jackie and her friends to come to a party that she was having around Christmas time. And so when we got there, it was a small place, but it was so crowded. And Wendy said to me, "Are you Macedonian?" "Jackie told me you were Macedonian." "Yeah, I am." "Well, we have this great guy that works at Hogan's, and I'd like you to meet him." So she grabbed my hand, and we found Bruce, and we met Bruce. And that was the beginning of meeting him. But he left early, so we didn't really exchange numbers or get to know each other. And soon after that, I don't know how it happened, but we connected again. He called me, and we connected again. And my mother thought he was like the second coming of Christ. He was just the greatest guy on the planet.
She was so happy.
Yeah, tako najde dobro dete.
И фамилията му беше добра?
И много добра фамилия.
От кое село? From what village was your husband?
He's from Gabrish, a big village of Gabrish, and they're very prominent in the St. George's Church. Everybody in St. George's is from Gabrish, it seems.
And your mother was approved. She was very happy.
Oh, she loved Bruce because nasho dete.
That was the most important thing. He's Macedonian.
Yeah, yes. Because they had already given up on me, and I don't know what you're waiting for, and nema da najdiš dobro dete, ti si se mnogo stara.
Even though you were only in your 20s.
That's right.
Culturally, that was old at that time.
It was expected of me to get married between the ages of 18 and 21. The girls were expected. Now, boys can do whatever they want, it seemed.
Yes. So then, tell us a little bit about your courtship. How you told us a little how you met, but how did that develop, and how long did you know him?
Well, Bruce and I kind of decided that we were meant for each other. You know, we spoke the same language, we had the same interest, we had the same kind of tabiat, that you would say, and we knew that, we would get married. So we met, we'll say December of 68, and we got married in October in 69.
Mm-hmm. And here we have a lovely picture of your wedding. Can you tell us a little bit about the day?
It was, we got married on Bruce's birthday, October the 25th, because it was the only place that we could find that we could have the wedding, and it was at the new Holiday Inn on Don Valley. And so we took that, and we had a great time, and people were shocked and surprised that, Senay Dome, we found each other.
And then, did you continue in terms of your marriage? Where did you live?
Well, when I met Bruce, Bruce lived in an apartment, and when we got married, I just moved in with him in that apartment. And soon after that, I said that I don't think that apartment living is for us because, you have to buy your own house. Mm-hmm. And soon after that, we bought a townhouse, and from that we bought a house, and we just continued to expand our real estate.
Right. And so where did you live the most, Zoe?
Well, we lived in an area called Henry Farms at Don Mills in Eglinton area, and that's when we had our kids.
And during this time, your husband was working?
Yes, he worked for Hogan's Pontiac for many years, and after that he went to Addison on Bay, and he worked there for a long time, and he had a great clientele.
Mm-hmm. And what were you doing during?
Well, I continued to work until I was pregnant with my first child, and in my 9th month I did finish, and I had my son, Daryl, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And soon after that, we had a girl, Donna. So.
And her name?
Donna and Daryl, and they're about, a couple of years apart.
When were their birthdays? That's a beautiful picture of them.
All when grown. They got grown up. Donna was born on the 15th. We'll start off with Daryl. Daryl was born a day after our first anniversary, October the 26th, 1970. We got married in 69, 1970. And Donna was born February the 15th, 73. Now, she was born on my mother's birthday.
That's wonderful.
So,
yes.
If luck would have it, we always celebrate my mother's birthday when we celebrate Donna.
And Zoe, tell us about those early years and your social life with the children growing up. Did you belong to any organization? Did you continue to go to the churches? What was your involvement like?
Well, we got involved in the community we lived in, with the children going to the school and, their tennis and their friends in the community. But it was always, when we went to church, it was always the Macedonian church.
And which one did you go to?
We went to St. George's because Bruce is from Gabrish and he's from St. George's, right? Mm-hmm. So we became St. George members, and we've been members there since then. And
you've been active members?
Yes, active members, and
what kind of activities were you involved in?
We always went to the social functions, and then when was the CMP? 78? 1979. Mm-hmm. Well, when the Canadian Macedonian place, first of all, I was very in favor of that. And
Yes, how did you become involved?
when Dotsa Bidoff and Vasa Evans and those very strong women that were very committed to make this happen, and John Bidoff, of course, and there were always functions of the future of Canadian Macedonian place, a seniors place for the Macedonians. There was always that kind of conversation, and there were fundraisers and events that I would attend.
Through St. George's Church?
No, it was through, the vision of having a Macedonian
Old age.
home.
So there were fundraisers that you were involved in?
Yes. And then I remember then there was the groundbreaking, then, there was just so many celebrations and ceremonies regarding that. And I remember the groundbreaking when they did pick a place and they, put the shovel in the ground for the first time, and it was a big celebration. And soon after that, we started thinking how we can raise money. And the thing that then Dotsa Bidoff created the Daughters of Macedonia, which was incredible, and there was lots of us, lots of people from St. Clement's.
So this was a group called the Daughters of Macedonia?
Yes. And those groups, which I was a member of, always worked on garage sales and anything to raise money for the CMP, the Canadian Macedonian Place, as they call it now. And we were very active. We were active in doing whatever. Anytime that there was bazaars and dances, anything that we can do to raise money, we did. And as you can see, it became, and then a lot of other people and a lot of other churches got involved with this.
Daughters of Macedonia?
Yeah, with this Daughters of Macedonia. And the phenomena that we would have a Macedonian community and a Macedonian seniors home.
You speak with a lot of excitement. Was that the feeling? That general feeling?
I'm very proud of our CMP, as we call it now, Canadian Macedonian Place. I'm very proud to say that we worked hard, and there was a very large group that did that.
Can you give us some names of some key people that got the organization really started and really active?
Well, as for example, Virginia's right there. She was from the very, very first, but Dotsa was she was the one that spearheaded the Daughters of Macedonian. And then out of that, it just seemed that there were so many people that came from St. Clement's, like Sandra Brown and Nikki Alexu. I mean, those names that, I still have fond memories of, that we worked so hard together. And Alexander, what was her name? What was Olga? Yeah, Olga Alexander. She really was a hardworking. She went to dry cleaners and people that leave their cleaning in dry cleaners and they don't pick it up. She went and created a venue where we would take all their clothes that are cleaned and in good condition, and we would sell them.
Oh, like a garage sale.
In the area of clothing usually. And then we had lots of other things, like household things that we were selling. It was just a lot of involvement, a lot of hard work, and a lot of great camaraderie with the community.
And during this time, what were you doing professionally?
During this time, well, I was a homemaker for about 10 years. So I had the young kids. And then I decided that now the kids are in school full time and they're busy with their school activities, and I had time in my hands. And I always wanted to be, I remember enjoying business when I was working for the Canadian National Railroad, and I always wondered, what would it be like to have your own business? And what kind of business would it be? And what would I do? And would I be successful? You know, all those questions that you kind of, you know, ruminate over and over and over. And I decided that I had a natural flair for clothing, and a ladies' fashion show would be a great expression of who I am. And I went on that path, and in a very short time, I opened up Zoe Christo Fashions.
And tell us about your business venture of Zoe's Crystal.
Well, my business venture was, you know, it was a passion of mine, and I wanted to succeed. And it was always on the back, and it was always another part of me and said, what if I failed? Oh my gosh. First of all, people were shocked when they heard that I was going to open up a store. And then, what if I failed? I don't want to be a failure. And so you really work harder and harder to get that going, because you don't want to fail and have everybody see. And luckily for me, it was, we had just came out of a small recession in the 80s, and it was just the right time to open up a business, because in the beginning of the 80s, things seemed to be just, I don't know, clipping along. People were really inspired of creating, you know, a bigger venue, and business was good. Business all around was good, and I just happened to be one of those people that opened the business, and immediately when I opened my store, the doors that I had, the first day I opened the doors, I made sales. I was shocked. Oh my God, people are really buying what I have bought to sell. And then it just ricocheted from that.
And Zoe, because of your passion for fashion, can you explain a little bit more about your involvement with Canadian Macedonian Place fashion shows? Because I know that that's your passion, and how you were involved in those shows.
Well, you know, when you have a business like that, especially in those days, fashion shows were really a great way of doing charity work, you know. And they would ask, you know, the big people like Simpsons and Eaton's and the big stores like to put on fashion shows. But my children's school and my community that we lived in, and they also wanted to raise funds. And the people that asked me to do a fashion show, I think it was Vasa or Doza. And I thought, I'd have to really put on a great show, because, you know, that's our people. So I did. I hired models, I hired music people, I you know, went out through the whole community, and it was an incredible success. We presented them with great fashion, some that I would carry in the store and some that I would go and get just to make the fashion show just more interesting. And it was a great success, and it was the first fashion show for the Canadian Macedonian Place. And Vasa, to the day that she died, would always say that event, we still have fond memories of the fashion show that you created.
And that you also kind of created a legacy, because there were many fashion shows after that for the Canadian Macedonian Place.
I guess that's true.
And fundraising fashion shows after that.
That brought money in. Mm-hmm. And at that time, when I did put on the fashion show...
what was the date for that first very big show, fashion show?
Do you know, I've forgotten it. I could get it, but I've forgotten it.
Roughly the year.
Well, we opened, the CMP opened up in 78. Okay, so 79. It was the latter part in the 70s. This had to be about, I opened my store in 83, so this had to be about 85, 86, somewhere around there. I was still new at the game, and I was thrilled to be able to pull it together and create a fashion show, a great fashion show, and they got a lot of people I can't even remember where we had it. Do you remember? I can't remember. Anyway, I think it was the Holiday Inn or something. It was a big venue, and Vasa, though it's a bit off, the next day called me. You know, you're kind of flying on a cloud because there's just so much happening. And she called me the next day and she said, I just want you to know that you made us proud.
Oh. That was a very special moment, yes.
Yeah, and what I did at that time is that I picked up the cost of putting on that show, and that meant that the CMP got more money for that event.
That was your volunteer
Contribution.
and fundraising contribution.
Yeah, that was my contribution to the CMP.
Right. Now, Zoe, tell us about your store and how where it was located.
Okay, my store was located at 120 Cumberland Street in Yorkville, and it just happened to be a store that was empty, and I rented it, and it was rented to a woman's clothing store before that. So there were some fixtures still there, but you know, I painted it and cleaned it up and bought more things that I needed. And luckily for me, I was in a great location. It's in Yorkville, and it was just the right time to open, and it was just the right clothing that I would bring in, because I had the Rosedale people and all the kind of people in that area become my customers. And it was great time, learned a lot, experienced a lot, met a lot of great people. I couldn't have...
Where did you learn your fashion type of knowledge? Did you attend any other schools or courses?
I didn't really. I just trusted myself. I guess everybody has some kind of gifts and talents within them, and I decided that I wanted to become a businesswoman, and that's the area I picked, and I just went along with the flow.
And tell us about your other education and your other passion.
Well, now, while I was still in the fashion business, I knew that I couldn't continue being running a store, being a retailer for long. And I thought, how could I take my gifts and talents and what I've learned so far and support other people in discovering what their unique gifts and talents are? And one day, a customer, Marcy Dorfman, came in. Everything was kind of a fluke. And she said that she was in town and she was taking a professional coaching course. And I said, what's that? She said, it's a course. It's a training that you support other people to discover what their uniqueness is and to support them in having the confidence to go out there and create it for themselves. Wow. I thought that would be a great thing for me to get into. So I phoned Adler School of Professional Coaching, and I enrolled. And there I am. And that was in... I guess in the 90s, early 90s.
And was that an extensive course then?
Yes, and it's very expensive now, but at that time coaching was a fairly new phenomena. Now it's very popular, and I just got my certification from the International Coach Federation, which is the umbrella of all the coaching schools throughout Canada and United States.
And how do you have clients and offices, and how do you go about your business?
Well, I do have clients, and I work out of my home, and everything is kind of referral, and I take courses, I broaden my knowledge, and I just keep abreast of all the new things that are coming out and the new learnings that are out there and available to us. Mm-hmm. And I'm fortunate to have this at my stage and age.
I was just going to ask about your encouragement from your family. Were you encouraged to go ahead and pursue your fashion business and your coaching from your husband?
Well, when I first decided to, I wanted to create a business. My husband supported me. He says, "Yeah, I think you'd be good at it. Yeah, you should. Yeah, you should go ahead. Yeah," and so he supported me fully. I went out there and made it all happen, but he supported me. And then when I wanted to go into the coaching, and my husband said, "What do you want to do that for? You have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or you got to have some other kind of training." I said, "No, I'm going to get trained when I take the courses." Anyway, he didn't really think that would be a great thing for me, but I wanted it, and I went out there and created it. Mm-hmm. And now we laugh about it. I said, "See, remember, if I listened to you, I wouldn't have done that."
Right. And yes, so you eventually did, in terms of your business, you eventually did sell your business. Is that what happened?
Well, what happened with my business is that I had the business for over 20 years, and the building was sold to someone else. And what happened to that new buyer is that they wanted to double my rent. And when I figured out the cost of that, it wasn't feasible for me. So I had to kind of sell out and terminate my business, and thought that I would open up another store in another location, but I decided not to. I was too old then. I was already in my 70s.
Okay, so you started your coaching career a lot earlier, in the same time as your
2000. Yeah, as I was having my business, I took courses and I did whatever I had to do, and in the 70s I started. In the 90s I started my coaching.
Right. And in terms of your personal life, all this time your kids were, of course, growing up and grown. And tell us a little bit about what happened to them.
What happened to them? Well, my daughter is 41 and my son is 44, and they continued their education. Daryl is a certified professional. He's a certified financial advisor. And Donna is right now. She's at home, and she's got the young kids. She's at home. She's a stay-at-home mom, but she's a yoga teacher, and also she's very creative, and her passion is acting. So she's pursuing that.
Great, and tell us about your grandchildren. We've got the beautiful pictures here.
Yeah, my grandchildren. Well, Liam is now 17, and he's going to university in the fall. He just got accepted to Ottawa and Carleton.
Your sons?
My grandson.
From your son?
From my son. Mm-hmm. And my grandchildren are 6 and 9. My two daughters are 6 and 9, and they're in primary, they're grade 2 and grade 4.
Their names? Yeah.
And the older one is Stephanie, and the younger one is Rylan. Rylan, Josephine, and Stephanie Zoe. Mm-hmm. Born, Donna's husband is Mark, and he's a bond trader. And my son, actually, he's a single parent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Zoe, you talked about your extensive career as in the fashion business, and also continuing with your personal coaching. Mm-hmm. What motivated you to pursue a career right from the start?
For my business or my coaching?
First, from your business.
Well, I don't know really. I just knew that there had to be more than just being a homemaker and cleaning and cooking and gardening, and I didn't want to just go out there and get a job, but I wanted to create something. And I was just motivated to find a way that I can make this happen.
Wonderful.
And I was lucky because we had a friend, Anthony Simone, that that had a unisex store. He had kind of a unisex store, and one day he called and asked me to help him, which was a God gift, because then I got to see that the action of running a store, not running a store, but being with people and serving people and having the satisfaction of completing that sale. You know, because when people like something, they just buy it and think, wow.
And you're definitely an example of a Macedonian entrepreneur, a woman who has been very successful in business and continuing on the journey. You're still very involved professionally now as a professional coach, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What motivated you, Zoe, to continue on that path?
Well, what motivated me is I know that as a woman and as immigrant woman and as a mother and as a wife, sometimes our job is underestimated and overlooked. And if I had not stepped out and gone and created a business for myself, I would have never known the satisfaction. And I wanted to continue that and support people, especially women, that have kind of the same mindset of, yeah, it's a big world, there's so much out there, we can't be stopped by our culture and the stories that we were told on how limiting they were in women not going out there and creating a life that they could be proud of and love.
Do you find that you have a lot of Macedonian women who come to you, or other kind of immigrant women who come to you?
I do. But now that I'm more integrated in the Macedonians, because when you're in business, you're so preoccupied with the business that you don't reach out. You reach out and be with the people you know, but not the new ones. And since May the 3rd, I met all these wonderful women that are very self-motivated and are out there creating their life. And we're going to get together and have a coffee and get to know each other.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yes.
good. And Zoe, while you were very busy with your career and with your number of careers, you continue to be involved in your church community. I understand that you're continuing to be active in is it
St. George's.
St. George's?
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. I am actually on the board. I'm on the board there, and I support it, as much as I can, and I just love contributing to the causes that that I'm passionate about.
And one of those causes, we showed a pamphlet of one event that was not long ago. Can you tell us about it?
The Elenden event. Yeah, the celebration. Yeah, I always contribute to, the heroes that made it possible for us to, that went and gave up their life so that we could have a great life. And I just think that's so incredible. And my Dedo Ilo is one of those people, and I'm very proud of him. Even though my mom said that she thought that her dad liked his country more than he liked his family. It was not so. It is that he really wanted the best for his people.
Mm-hmm. And talking about being involved, Zoe, in the Macedonian community, at your involvement with St. George Church, like you mentioned, and the Canadian Macedonian Place, what motivated you to give of your time, your energy to the different functions and events?
Well, I always feel that, along my journey, people have supported me, and because nobody can do it on their own. You always get the support of what you need. Sometimes we don't see the support, but, there's always that support if you want to take it. And I always feel that I've been lucky enough to, come to this place in my journey of living life, and I like to give back what I've learned to to other people that, are looking to see how they can expand their life into the areas that they want to create.
Mhm. And have you been had an opportunity to go back to Vumbel, your birthplace?
Actually, I did go to Europe. We didn't go right to Vumbel because, unfortunately, Vumbel it has been really, through the war, there's nothing left. I think there's a church left and a lot of...
It's not inhabited.
No, it's not. Mm-hmm. It is not. There's nothing there, and unfortunately for us, that there isn't a place that we can go and say, this is where we came from. Although my brother, my kid brother, Donald, says that I'm going to go there because there's a video that's coming around for Vumbel that I sent him. I don't know whether you've seen it. Yeah, there is and it's of course all rocks and stones and hills, and he says, I just want to get there. I said, do you want to invest in Vumbel? Mm-hmm. We laugh about it. But it's amazing that you're really, you can never turn your back on your roots, and you can never forget where you came from. And I'm just grateful that I had the family that I did have and the opportunities that I had and that I was able to create, and the people around me that supported me in my vision. And
you've had a very rich life with lots of activities and people around you. Zoe, what would you say is something that you're particularly proud of? I know you have a lot of choices.
Well, recently, in my coaching world, I wanted to get my professional certified coach, and it takes many hours, many courses, many, a lot of dedication to get that. And I recently got that, so I'm really proud of that accomplishment. But it's not over. There's always, you just have to keep it up as well. Mm-hmm. You have to keep up the learning and the growing and the discovering of what else is new.
Wonderful. And with that in mind, what advice would you have, Zoe, for young Macedonians? You're an example of a very successful woman who was able to make a lot of her dreams and wishes come true. What would you say your advice is to the younger generation?
Well, my advice to anyone would be to, listen to that soul inside of you that is wanting to branch out, that wants to be expressed, that wants to create, that wants to do something, that you have this other part of you, this voice that's saying, no, you can't do it, no, what if, to really go out there and do it. Because until you take that first step, you'll never know. And when I reflect on my journey, if I had not taken that first step, although it was very scary, and a lot of people said, what do you know about that? And why are you doing that? I hope you have deep pockets, meaning that you have a lot of money. No, I don't have deep pockets, and I don't intend to just throw it away. So you really work hard to make it happen. Because the world out there is always saying, are you sure? Will it happen? You just have to keep taking one step at a time.
And talking about one step at a time, is there anything in the future that you're aiming for?
That I'm aiming for? Well, I want longevity, and I want health, and I want to be able to give back everything I've learned so far.
Wonderful. And any ideas in terms of how to go about it?
Well, I think now, personally, in this venue here, I would like to get more Macedonian women together, so that we could, explore and discover and create and make the world a better place for everyone.
And you made a very interesting, you had a very interesting gathering along those lines not too long ago at Canadian Macedonian Place, and I think it was a gathering of women who came here, and I know that you were involved in starting or just kind of rekindling. Was it the
Yes.
Mothers of Macedonia? The
Daughters of Macedonia. Yes, it was, and that was a few years ago. And somehow we opened up that possibility, and we didn't carry it out. I still would like to pick it up where we left off and continue that, because I think that would be a great thing to do. I don't know how that's going to work or what, how it's going to end up, but I think that there's a lot of women out there that would love to connect, discover, and move forward together.
And on that note, what do you think is the importance of having this space here, Canadian Macedonian Place? What do you think is the importance of it for the future generations?
Well, it's something that we can all sort of say, this is where we belong. This is where we started, and this is how we started. My son was really surprised when he heard my speech on December the 3rd and said, Mom, I didn't know all that stuff about you. So I want our children to see that, hey, there was a beginning and the middle, and now we're creating a bigger end so that they can be involved and do what they need to do to keep their culture and their background alive.
And tell us about your speech and that event, what it was and where it was held, what was involved.
The speech I did here on May the 3rd?
So it was on May the 3rd, 2015. Tell us about that event.
Well, it was actually very moving. I was able to recollect all my years of living and discovering and experiencing, and put it into a 10-minute, I think we had about 10 minutes to tell our story from the beginning to the end, and supporting pictures.
So who was organizing this event, and what did it
Actually,
entail?
it was Virginia Evans. What an incredible idea that she had to reach out to women that she didn't even know but heard about.
And was this through the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society?
It was through the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society, and she reached out to women that have, Macedonian women that have accomplished. Immigrant Macedonian women that have accomplished. And it was great to hear. I think it was a fabulous venue.
And you were given an opportunity? Was it a certificate, or was it
it was an opportunity for me to share my experience, and I was so grateful. And because of that, I'm here today, reliving my story all over again in a more
relaxed?
well, in a longer venue.
Yes, yes.
I had this is more than 10 minutes. And I think it's great to get in touch with that, because it I don't know, it just soothes the soul and just makes you...
So the purpose of the event was to...
The purpose of the event is to get women together and to really...
To recognize women who had been involved in the Macedonian...
Yeah, actually, it was women, immigrant women, who have accomplished. What was the exact
and
name?
Contributed, yeah.
And contributed to themselves and in the home and to society.
Mm-hmm. And you were chosen to be one of the women who was an example.
I was one of those fortunate women that I was able to share my life experience and journey and how I got to be where I am today.
Wonderful. And your children were there?
Yes, my son was there, and he videoed the whole thing for me, and I have the UPS, and he told me, he says, Mom, I didn't know half of this about you.
Mm-hmm. So I understand this was the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society lecture series, right, on women who are born in the old country and became successful in Canada. And you're certainly a wonderful example of...
Yeah, it was great that they chose me, because my Aunt Sophie, when she would come and visit me in the store, and she'd say, you know what you should do? You should get that picture from the old country when you came here and put it at the back of the store. People would be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
You
Absolutely.
know that picture you saw? And she would always, tell me that. And yeah, it's kind of shocking when you stop and think of what is possible for people and what they can create.
Absolutely. And on that note, what would you like to say to all the Macedonian girls from Vumbel and from all the different parts of Macedonia who are going to be watching you on this interview? What would you like to tell them?
I would like to tell them not to have them stopped by the voices in their head that tells them the negative, no, they can't do it, or the culture that we've been raised in and know of that says, well, women should do this and not that. I think everybody should have a self-expression on what they want to do and go out there and do it, because we only have one crack at this thing called life. And that's what I say. And that's what I think that everybody should do. Whether it's men and women or anyone, everyone should do what they feel that they can accomplish.
Thank you, Zoe, for giving us that advice and for giving us an opportunity to have you here at the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society for the archives and for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best in your future ventures.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my life story, and hopefully this will inspire other people to just step into the unknown and see